Okay, everybody, welcome to the first meeting of 2023 for EVCO, the first monthly meeting. Tommy, next slide, please. All right, so the agenda for tonight, we are having our annual general meeting. Then it's the news. EVs in the winter is going to be Sam's presentation. We have a presentation by, who's doing, anyway, EV mandates in Canada. Past and future events, which will be me, and then the roundtable as usual. Next slide, please, Tommy. All right, so the annual general meeting. So the board is composed of 8 directors, which are elected for 2-year terms. Returning for the second year is me. Darren is our corporate secretary. Mitchell, who will be actually doing the other presentation, is also already a director he's in his second year now, starting. Robert and Sam are also not up for election. So the only 3 people that are up for election is Raymond Lurie, our president, Craig, our treasurer, and Nicola, who is a director at large. So they are seeking re-election. If there's nobody, I've never actually done the election. Do we do anything? Sam, does anybody want to be on the board? If you do, put it in the chat. I think our slate is, we still have mabe a spot or 2 that we can open up. I'm sure Darren will correct me if I'm wrong on that. But we're not maxed?
We're at max.
Oh, we are at max. But I think Nick wants to go up his spot if somebody else wants to take it. But if not, then I think, Nick, you're happy to stay.
We have Ryan
And
that said he's interested.
Ryan is interested? Sweet. Okay, so do we do the election tonight? Like, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's do this. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants because Raymond is in Hawaii. So,
Mike, do you want me to take over and do it? Because I know I'm up for election, but I've done this sort of thing before.
well, I think if everybody just sort of raises their hands to vote for Nick or Ryan,
I mean, I'm the first one.
or
Craig, are you
going for re-election, Greg?
Yes, I would like to,
And Raymond did mention he was also interested in returning.
And Raymond did mention he was interested in returning, yes.
now,
So do we have to like vote? Like everybody?
no, we have to ask Nick.
Gonna step down,
Or you just gonna step down?
and then it's gonna be if anybody has any objections to Ryan.
Okay.
Or if not,
Let's do that. So Nick is gonna step down if Ryan wants to step up. If anybody has any objections, raise your hand in Teams or in person. Raise it now. And if not, then everyone will be
And technically, does anybody have?
everyone will be acclaimed.
Mike, you should actually ask, does anybody have any objections to either myself or Raymond being acclaimed as well?
Okay, yes. So if anybody has any objections for any of the people being re-elected as acclaimed, or if anybody has any objections to Ryan becoming a new director at large, raise your hand and let us know. And I'm just going to walk over here. And slide says 2022. Oh, did I not? Yeah, I might not have changed that. Oh, well. All right, so it looks like we're good. So Ryan, welcome to the board. Bye, Nick. And Raymond is our president once again. Huzzah!
Actually, no, technically, at our first meeting.
Our first meeting, we'll figure that out. Whatever. He's going to be the president. I don't want to do it.
We know all that.
And Craig is the treasurer. Okay, next slide, Tommy. The news, which is me again, so you get to listen to me for a bit longer. But first, we're going to thank CAA for our sponsorship because they helped us out a lot last year, and hopefully we continue that relationship going forward. All right, so for those of you who have been paying attention to local politics, myself and Raymond were at the Transit Commission on Friday presenting about why Ottawa needs to continue buying e-buses, and it passed, except for one Barrhaven councillor who decided he wants to support hybrid buses, or I don't know, whatever. It passed. We're getting e-buses in Ottawa, and we're getting like 26, which is, you know, it's something, but it's not like Vancouver. Vancouver is buying 600. So TransLink announced in December. So we got a lot of news this month, by the way, because it's been 2 months. So we're going to start with December, and we're going to work our way forward in time. All right. So December, at the beginning of December, TransLink announced that they will be rapidly accelerating their plans to buy electric buses. Basically, they have a new climate action plan, which is sort of supporting this. Am I in the middle of the screen? Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
So the company's going to add 155 electric buses in the next 2 years. So Ottawa, if you're listening, we need more. And then another 460 by 2030. TransLink did not confirm which brand of bus they will be buying, but they have a 4-bus pilot, just like us, with 4 Novabus electric buses pictured above. Ottawa has a bunch of diesel Nova buses, but they will be adding 15 more over the next few months of the electric Nova bus. So there are many different bus brands out there. Ottawa has New Flyers, Vancouver with Nova bus. Okay, so Mercury, if you boat, you know Mercury engines, and they now have kind of a cool electric outboard motor. So the Avator 7.5E, it's fully self-contained, so the battery is in the motor. It includes everything you need. It has the propulsion, the swappable battery, and the electronics all in that one unit that you attach to the transom, and you just give her. It's a 1 kilowatt hour, so it's not huge, but it is in a waterproof enclosure, and it is swappable, so you can like throw a couple of them in the boat if you want. It's 48 volts. It's good for about 45 minutes of runtime, and that's if you use it flat out. So obviously, if you're being more reasonable about it, then it'll last longer. And it weighs 16 pounds, which is, I think, actually lighter than our 9.9 outboard gas one. So not bad. So it's equivalent to a 3.5 horse. So it's, a little anemic, but for a lot of boats, that's plenty. So pretty cool motor. Pretty cool. Next slide, please, Tom. He's eating chips. Parenting win. Okay, so this is for, which one of them? Is it Phil that wants to golf? Mark, this is for Mark. So Mark, this slide is just for you, bud. So Volkswagen is talking about maybe making an ID Golf GTI. VW boss Thomas Schaefer said they will not be retiring the GTI nameplate when they go all electric. And hey, it's Raymond. And they will not be retiring the Golf name when the current generation, the current 8th gen Golf platform is retired in 2027-28. So it instead could become, they're just spitballing right now, but it could become part of the ID lineup. So they would have like an ID Golf and an ID Golf GTI. He was asked if it would fit, like how it fits with the ID3. And he said it would be below the ID3, but above the ID2. Because the ID3, they see it as more of like a big Golf, like a Golf Plus. And he says that the ID brand does not need to have numbers associated with it. So the example he gave was the ID Buzz, which apparently is the actual name for the bus that they're coming out with next year. So there's the ID3, ID4, as you all know, and then the ID Buzz. And so now they might have the ID Golf. And hopefully they bring it to Canada, Volkswagen, because people like this car. So you heard me. Next slide, please. Right? The wagon, come on. Continuing with Volkswagen, Volkswagen is seeking to build a gigafactory in Canada. It will become the company's first battery cell plant outside of Europe. VW is reported to be looking at locations in Canada. François-Philippe Champagne, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, signed an addendum to a MOU that they had already signed in August. So we signed that addendum in December 1st about the battery factory. They plan to produce 40 gigawatt hours per year by 2030 at the new site, wherever that may be, which is about enough for 500,000 vehicles. Construction of a cathode material plant by EVCO, which is a company that's working with Volkswagen on battery stuff, is actually under construction already at Kingston. And deliveries of cathodes are planned for 2027. So they're already building battery stuff in our own backyard. So that's kind of cool. So watch this space. Next slide, please. And continuing with Volkswagen, because there's a lot of news about Volkswagen, they are looking at partnering with Foxconn to build Scout EVs. Scout is the brand that has been dead since before I was born. They did off-road vehicles like Jeeps and pickups and stuff, and Volkswagen bought the name and the rights to that company and are planning on bringing electric vehicles under the Scout brand back to North America by 2026. And that's a short timeline to set up a whole factory to build cars and everything. So there's talk of them partnering at first with Magna, but I think Magna's turned them down. So now they're looking at Foxconn. Now, Foxconn's known for being the maker of the iPhone. They're not really known for cars. However, they are building the Lordstown Endurance now. They bought the factory in Lordstown, Ohio, and they're now the contractor building the Lordstown Endurance pickup trucks. And so they might pick up the VW Scouts as well. So that'll be cool. Watch this space. Volkswagen seems keen on Scout. Next slide, please. And speaking of Lordstown Endurance, they are now approved for sale. So the once vaporware company seems to actually becoming more legit now. Don't get too excited. They've only made 500. They're only planning on making 500 this year. But they are delivering them to customers. So all 500 people on the list will get their trucks. That's what it looks like. As I mentioned, they're built by Foxconn in Lordstown, Ohio. They have hub motors. That is what's interesting. So unlike a normal EV that we're all used to, where the motor's sort of in the axle, the Lordstown Endurance has 4 hub motors in the wheels, which is a different approach, but it's similar to what Aptera is doing. So Aptera, if you're familiar, has a little 3-wheeled, cool solar-powered car thing coming out, and it uses the same hub motors, well, same brand of hub motors in its vehicles. So anyway, another pickup truck. I've added it to the buyer's guide because apparently now it's a real thing. Although if you want to buy one, you have to be a corporate customer for now. So there you go, Sam. You can maybe buy a Lordstown Endurance. Okay, never mind. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. Look, yeah. There you go. Next. Do it. Come on.
I'm doing it.
Click it. Click it. No, just Tommy. Okay. So this had me excited for like 10 minutes until I realized what they were talking about, and now I'm disappointed. But a company in New Zealand, and so there's your first hint, called EVs Enhanced, has developed what might be the cure to the Leaf. So they are building brand new battery packs using LFP blade batteries. So that's lithium iron phosphate batteries for those who aren't nerdy like me. And they are liquid cooled, so actively thermally managed lithium iron phosphate, which are indestructible EV batteries basically, that fit inside in a Leaf and have the same energy density as the Leaf packs. So they're actually better than the old Leaf that I have. So this is really cool. However, they are only available in New Zealand. And they might go to Australia in a few years, and they are looking for international partners once production capacity allows. So if anybody's an entrepreneur that really wants to get into like fixing Leafs, maybe hit them up, and then like we can have a Canadian branch that can replace my Leaf pack with something that's not crappy. But yeah, they'll take any Leaf model from 2011 all the way to 2022. They support 24, 30, and 40 kilowatt hour packs. They can actually replace the 24 kilowatt hour pack in my ghetto sled with like a 40 kilowatt hour one in the same form factor, and so upgrade my car. And then they won't degrade because they've got they're LFP with liquid cooling. So there you go. So that's pretty cool, and they're covered by a 160,000 kilometer warranty, which is also pretty good. That's standard EV battery warranty. So there you go. So if you haven't believed onto it, yes. Go ahead.
So Mike, I was thinking maybe Tony Graham would be interested in something like this.
Maybe, yeah, because it would make Leafs good again.
That's
Yeah.
Raymond, old president.
That's Raymond, the old
It
president
is.
from Hawaii.
You didn't win your vote tonight, sorry.
Hey, look, it's not.
You've been voted off the island, literally.
I've been voted off the island. Okay, good. Then I have a break.
You want some? Okay. Anyway, next slide, please, Tommy. Okay. So I just helped a friend actually ditch a Toyota for an EV this weekend. So there you go. So drivers are increasingly ditching Toyotas and Hondas in favor of EVs. And this isn't just from me anecdotally. This is from Standard & Poor's global mobility data. The links are in the slideshow, which we will post later. But basically, the most common trade-ins for Model Ys, 3s, Mach-Es, and Bolts, both of the Bolts, are the Japanese cars. They're Honda, Lexus, Toyota, Mazda, and Subarus. So that's what people are trading in to buy EVs. And according to S&P, Honda owners in particular are showing interest in electric vehicles because Honda does not have an EV on the market and they won't until 2024. So this is Toyota being put on notice.
And Toyota fired their CEO and.
They did, so
and
they
then
just did.
announced that they're pouring millions of dollars. Are you gonna talk about it?
I'm not going to talk about that because that was too new and I didn't have
Okay.
time to put it in the slide. So yeah, so what Sam is mumbling over here, if you guys didn't hear, is that Toyota just gave the boot politely to Akito Toyoda, the guy who was in charge of Toyota, because he's not forward thinking enough about EVs. And so they are now going to start investing heavily in electrification of their cars. So this is promising. This is good. Toyota is very late to the game. Although I did post a picture on the EV group today in Facebook of a BZ4X in the parking lot at my work, which was crazy. So
With wheels on.
with the wheels still on, they were still attached. Unbelievable. So anyway, next slide. This is more for Sam and Ahmed and other people who have eGMP cars. That's Kia, Hyundai, Genesis cars. Electron has introduced a vehicle to load adapter that works with your Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis car. It's $150 US compared to the $550 from the OEM one. But I already have the OEM one, so I'm not going to sell it. It does the same job. Should be good. So if you're in the market for a cool Ioniq 5, like the cool kids here, then you can look at getting the Electron cheaper V2L adapter that would probably be in stock as well. So there you go.
Hey, Mike, is the V2L feature on the eGMP cars, like, is that a proprietary protocol or is it a standard J1772 thing?
I think it's a proprietary implementation because it has to do with the charger on board the vehicle. It's
But I mean, that's their hardware implementation, like, that doesn't
Yeah.
really matter.
Yeah, I'm not
They're
sure.
communicating through the J1772 board to ask the car to provide power.
Yes.
Whether that's coming from the OBC or from a separate piece of hardware doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they're using
I mean, the way
standard
that-
protocol that's gonna work with other manufactured vehicles that implement the feature.
Yeah, I mean, I know the eGMP platform, the way they did it is the inverter on board, like for the car, is a two-way inverter, but most EVs don't have that, right? So maybe they use J72 standards, I don't know, hopefully, but I don't, yeah, who knows? Next slide. Mercedes announced a high-power charging network. So this is actually good for me and Sam over here because they plan on building 400 stations in Canada and the US this year. The stations will have 350 kilowatt chargers, so the good stuff. They're going to have 2,500 stalls in North America at those 400 stations by 2027. ChargePoint is the back end. They're already a partner with Mercedes doing the back end stuff for them anyway. It'll be available to all CCS EVs that support, and it will support plug and charge. That's where you just show up, plug in, and then walk away. And the money takes care of itself. So my car doesn't do that yet. It might one day, but anyway, they will all have at least 4 stalls, up to 30 stalls, and they will be 350 kilowatts of power. So these are going to be awesome, fast charging. Hopefully they're reliable. Looking at you, Petrocan. But yeah, watch this space.
And electrify.
And Electrify Canada. And all you other 350 kilowatt charger providers with unreliable stalls. Anyway, next slide, please. Measurement Canada is accepting applications for per kilowatt hour billing now as of December. So in August, we reported that they were looking at, allowing this magic to happen. And now they're actually accepting applications from charging companies, with Tesla being one of the first to apply for approval. So hopefully sometime this year, Teslas will start charging per kilowatt hour versus per time, which should make things a lot more equitable for people. Because if you have a fast car like mine that charges really quickly, I pay less for the same amount of energy as somebody with a Bolt, which doesn't seem fair because I'm there less time, right? So hopefully this will even things out a bit. Next slide, please. Charon says NAT and NAX. I like that title. I made that up myself. You're welcome. So Charon is the Charging Interface Initiative. It's an industry group that includes Tesla, by the way. It's 155 members. one of which is Tesla. And basically they've said that North America already has a standard connector, and it's called CCS. So this is sort of like the DVD or the VHS Betamax thing, where yes, technically the Tesla one is more elegant of a solution, but CCS is there already. There are 50 vehicle models and counting that have CCS built in versus only 4 with the Tesla connector. And CCS chargers already outnumber superchargers, both worldwide and in North America. There are way more J1772, which is what CCS is based on, connectors than Tesla destination chargers. Basically, every single car maker except Aptera and Tesla has already agreed and invested in CCS. And the nail in the coffin, if you're hoping that NACS will take over as the new standard, is that NACS has not passed through any of the established standardization processes, and that's ISO, IEC, or SAE, but CCS has. So CCS is legitimately already a standard, whereas NACS would have to jump through all those hoops in order to become one.
Did Tesla also make an adapter to be able to use CCS?
Yeah, and the reason Tesla could do that is because they were part of the CCS protocol like development, so they had all the ability to do that, right? So yes, the NACS would be cool if they had opened it up 10 years ago when EVs were still a new thing, and that everyone could have this cool, elegant little connector. But that's not what happened, and now it's too late to come to the party and be like, ours is better. It's like, that's great. Everyone else is using this other thing that actually works still. So.
Does it actually work? I mean,
Yeah.
Rivians and F-150s are exploding at the moment.
Well, I mean, that's a Rivian and F-150 thing.
Yeah, that's not the.
And
That's not the charge
not the
connector.
Dieselgate chargers don't seem to work consistently.
I mean, it might be the charger, but it's not the connector's fault.
It's not the connector's fault. That's other problems.
And also, NACS uses CCS protocol. It
Yeah.
uses Tesla connector, but NACS is not the same as Tesla. It's actually a different standard. But yeah, it's completely the same protocol. It's just a different plug.
Anyway, CCS is winning. So that was.
Yeah, but
They're not-
does NACS support vehicle to grid? I don't know if it does, right?
No, I don't know.
CCS does. The newer version does, right?
New version does,
I
yeah.
mean, those aspects don't really matter. All we're really committing to here is the hardware. Like, they can add software features later on. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty much stuck with CCS.
Turn the camera a little bit. Cool. All right, next slide, Tommy. Okay, so now we're into Tesla corner. Speaking of Tesla connectors. So they're getting Canada ready for the Tesla Semi. There are a few companies in Canada that have ordered the Semi, including Loblaws and a few others. So Tesla has sent a proposal to Chrystia Freeland, our Minister of Finance and Deputy Minister. Oh, also the Deputy Minister of Finance. Okay, whatever. About Canada's need to invest in EV charging infrastructure. They'd like the federal government to identify what the routes would be where they need to deploy these chargers, and then provide money basically to build out the chargers for the trucks, which they're calling MHD ZEVs. That would be medium to heavy duty zero emissions vehicles. That's a government acronym, not a Tesla one. Or it's not even an acronym, it's an initialism, but whatever. They're also proposing the government provide grants to freight haulers to help them support upgrading their facilities to have more power, basically, to charge the trucks. And I mean, they make the good point that charging facilities need to be in place before the trucks arrive so that when they enter service, they can just get going, right? So these are all good things. And it's good to see them starting to lay groundwork for electrifying the truck fleet.
Mike,
Now we-
is there any word on which plug they want to use to do that?
I think they're using CCS. I'm not sure though.
Okay, because I'm concerned that there's just one network, right? Instead of yet
Yeah.
again a separate Tesla network. It'd be great if every heavy duty vehicle
CCS.
could use the same network, right?
Yeah, I imagine it would be CCS because that's what the buses and everything are using, right? And like Lion Electric's using CCS and all that. So
I mean, CCS is a stopgap until MCS becomes, well, MCS just became ratified recently. So heavy vehicles should start using MCS.
But is it, again, is the hardware different between CCS and MCS?
Yeah, very different. MCS can support like much higher amperages and higher voltages. It's good for up to almost 4 megawatts.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's still new.
In the States, it's up to 1.4, isn't it?
Mhm.
In terms of deployed systems, but MCS standard supports 3.75 megawatts.
Okay, so moving on, so we don't waste the whole night talking about things. Tesla's being sued. There's a class action lawsuit brought by a customer for self-driving. And their defense was kind of interesting. They basically said, this is a quote, that mere failure to realize long-term aspirational goals is not fraud, which I found kind of interesting. Tesla has been promising full self-driving since 2016. Some owners have gotten fed up waiting for it to happen. And they were promised that they have all the needed hardware already in the cars, right? Or if you guys remember back in 2016 when the Model 3 came out, they were talking about, oh yeah, the car's already configured for it. You just need, software updates to enable it. Turns out that's not the case. And so, yeah, so people are annoyed. So watch this space. It's not looking good. Next slide, please. Fisheries and Oceans have added Model 3s and Lightnings to their fleet. So DFO has begun to transition to electric, and they have a fleet of Model 3s and F-150s. They have 3 Model 3s, which are all in Vancouver, doing stuff for the Pacific Biological Station. And then they have a bunch of Lightnings that are sort of peppered around the country. So Vancouver, Winnipeg, Montreal, Moncton, Dartmouth, and St. John's, Newfoundland. They all have these F-150 Lightnings doing all kinds of stuff, including working with the Coast Guard. And last year they bought 2 Bolt EVs, so they are slowly but surely electrifying their vehicle fleet. So that's pretty cool.
Bolt?
Hmm?
What's a bolt?
Bolt. Oh, I typo. I mean, bold to buy bolts. Not so much. Next slide, please, Tommy. Put me out of my misery. Okay, this is Sam's turn.
Oh, no.
Yes. Heckle me. Get to present.
So I'm just gonna say hi first, and then we'll go. I'm Sam. Nice to meet you guys.
Sam the Electric Man.
Yeah, I'm an electrician by trade. I like EVs, like all of us, obviously. I own one, but unfortunately, it's in the shop.
The dealer broke it.
Yes, I didn't break it though. The dealer did. Just to say. So they asked me, or we talked about doing a little presentation on EVs in winter for the new EV owners. So I'm a new EV owner. I figured I'd do something. I don't like to talk to the camera, so we're gonna go with the slides, and I'm gonna talk in the back. Okay, keep going. Okay, one more click. So I introduce myself. Do like 2 or 3 because it'll take a while. So we're going to talk about the myths and of winter and EVs. Like again, the advantages of driving an EV in the winter and the disadvantages when we skipped. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
And what to do to advance your EV experience in the winter. So little tips that I found was helpful. And don't be shy if you have any comments, jump in. They'll be interactive that way. So let's do, I got a couple myths on the neck. There you go. EVs can't do road trips in cold weather. I've heard that so many times. Unless you have a Leaf, that's not true. So I did many of them myself, and I had no issue. It was actually very fun. Your car will die if you're stuck in traffic. How many times did we see that online? Everybody in forums are just trying to say that, but actually any car will die in traffic if it's long enough. You'll run out of gas or battery. But EVs might last longer because you're actually not driving them. It's just your heating that's using a bit of power. Then the batteries will fail because they freeze. They don't freeze. So I have really no comments. I just read that a couple places. So I thought it was funny. I don't know if you guys have any myths that you heard often about winter time. No,
The battery takes care of itself, like they won't freeze.
it won't freeze. And it's not like it's water in there, so we're good.
It's
Yeah.
gotta be pretty cold for it to freeze, like Mars temperatures.
Yeah.
Do you guys find that the battery drains a lot faster in the winter, trying to keep itself warm?
So actually, we're going to talk
That's a
about
good
that.
question.
Good question. So the you do lose range, but we're going to talk a bit more in details of why. But most of the time, people have charger at home, and they'll plug it in, and it'll maintain itself. They'll keep.
There's nuance to it, so it's not as simple as it was.
Yeah, it's a very good question, but there's a lot of specifics behind it.
Like if it was -20, you probably would leave it in your driveway for a week.
Yeah, that's fine.
Unplugged.
It's gonna stay there.
Okay.
It's just, so what happens is the chemistry slows down. So when you first wake up the car, it'll tell you, oh, like the range is super low because like it's really cold, right? But then as the chemistry warms up, it actually unlocks the extra charge, right? So there's that, and then, yeah, it does use a little bit of energy to heat itself up as well, so there's like a bit of drain there. So it's more than just like a permanent reduction because of the cold. It really depends on like what you're doing with the car, right? Like if you're on a road trip and it's -30, when you first wake up the car, it'll be like, oh my God, I have no like range, blah, blah, blah. But then as the car warms up and you charge it and things like start flowing, then you can unlock like your normal range back again, right? So it's all about thermal management.
The worst,
Guys, one at a time though.
um,
I'm not sure what he's.
Right.
anyway, what I have found is the worst thing you can do is sort of errands in a really cold day. If you go, you start your morning, you heat up the car, you go to Walmart, you spend an hour at Walmart, then you go, they don't have what you want, so you go to Home Depot, you spend an hour at Home Depot, then you spend an hour at whatever.
Your battery doesn't get excited and it doesn't create heat. Yeah.
Well, but because each time you're getting in the vehicle, you have to sort of warm everything back up again, and then you only go a short distance, and then it gets cold again, and then you got to warm it up again, and you're cold again, warm it again. So you lose for having the amount of you have actually drive, you will lose a lot of range. Now, normally on days like that, I mean, you don't actually drive all that much in the sense that you're doing errands like that. So, at the end of the day, you will have actually driven, 50 kilometers, but you'll lose 150 kilometers worth of range. But it's not a case where.
But then like if you're actually driving 150 kilometers on a road trip, then the battery gets a chance to warm up, so you actually won't lose that much range.
Exactly. If you're actually driving 150 kilometers, you don't actually
So
lose
it's a
that much
difference,
range.
it's all about use case, right?
I have two questions, one here, and I got Phil online, so we'll start here.
I feel that there's convolution with the fact that this question, it's for older cars, and you are answering this question with people in mind who have the newer cars. So there are cars without heat pumps and stuff like that. So I have an older car, you have a Leaf and some other, you have the same car I have. So the older style cars are much more adversely affected by the cold weather.
Right. I will talk about it later on with heat pumps
I
and
just
stuff.
wanted to,
But you're right, 100%. There's a huge difference, and technology has come a long way from resistant
From
heating
the Leaf.
compared to heat pumps.
Yeah.
Phil, quick question.
Yes, so it is important since this is aimed for people who are new to EVs, about the myth that batteries will freeze. Yes, this general statement, all batteries are true. It's scare tactics. However, people do need to understand that if you went on a long trip, let's say 2 months away in the winter, and you left your car unplugged, it might freeze because the car's going to need to heat the battery. And how does it heat the battery? By taking energy from the battery. So eventually it might run out of energy to keep itself from freezing. So it could potentially freeze. So people just need to know about that. It's very simple. If you're going on a really long, hang on, let me finish. If you're going on a really long trip in the winter, just make sure to plug your car into the charger.
Well, Phil, I mean, that theoretically, yes, but the winter would have to be extremely long because the battery heater for most EVs, like for my Ioniq, it's like 100 watts, right? Like it's not a lot. So you're talking like a 77,000 watt hour battery pack if it's full, and you're using 100, 200 watts to heat the battery once in a while when it's minus 30 out. Like it's extremely low draw, and it would need to be really cold for an obscene amount of time for it to actually like run out of charge to, like, if you leave your car dead at the airport parking lot, yeah, that's probably not a great idea. But for most people, most of the time, you're not going to like jet off to Florida for 2 months and leave your car at 10% in your driveway, right? Like that's.
But bottom line, I think is if you're going to leave the car for a long time, just leave it plugged and you're not going to have a problem.
Yeah, that's a good point though. Yeah, that's a well taken point, Phil.
If you have your own private charger.
Well, if you don't have your own private charger, I think his point is well taken. But if you don't have your own charger, then your best bet is before you go to Hawaii, charge it up to 80, and then just park it, and it'll have enough charge when you get home. Like it'll take months to.
And I'm sure the battery will stop heating itself at some point.
Yeah, usually below 20% or below 10%.
I mean, like my car doesn't heat itself
Might be
at
10.
all. Actually, when it's parked, I don't lose any battery at all. Not
My
every car
Leaf does, and it's a 2012, so yours probably does too.
I've left it parked in the winter for like a whole week and the battery stays
Yeah,
exactly.
but you may not notice
You might not
because it
notice.
takes so little draw
Yeah.
and it needs to be very cold.
Yeah.
For the battery to actually heat itself up. So you may not see that
Yeah,
draw
like
on it.
when we say heat it up, we're not talking about like heat it up to a nice balmy 20 degrees or whatever. Like it's subsistence heating, so it'll heat it up just enough so that it like physically doesn't freeze solid. Right, so it's not a lot of power.
You
It's not a
won't
lot
see,
of,
like, it's really minimal.
yeah. But if you plug an OBD into it, you can see how much it actually draws, and it's a couple hundred watts. Like it's really nothing, but it's just to like make sure the chemistry doesn't freeze more than anything else.
Okay, next slide.
Fancy transitions.
Yes, advantages of driving EVs in the winter. That gets clicked. So, on-demand heat pump. So basically, most people can use their car apps and all that to start their car and get heat inside the car at all times without idling and actually affecting our nice planet. And so it's a guilt-free, basically, convenience, I can say. Then weight distribution.
Well, it's more than that because like no scraping.
Well, there is some scraping, and we'll talk about that at the last slide, but
Okay.
it does make the scraping so much easier. It's very nice. That's the best feature I find about EVs so far. It's the preheated car, especially when it's plugged in, doesn't drain your battery while you do it. So it's really nice. So yeah, no scraping or little scraping. The weight distribution, it's so much better than an ICE car. My car, I got a Ioniq 5 rear wheel drive because I tested it in the snow and the weight distribution is amazing. You don't need the 4-wheel drive. It won't lose its rear end. It won't, it's really well thought. So the traction is awesome. So that's really a thumbs up on electric cars.
Statement there is not true.
I can drive to.
We won't say weight distribution, it's the center of mass that's much lower than the.
But the weight distribution is also better because the battery is throughout the car instead of having motor and transmission
The
in the
weight
front.
distribution and center of mass is basically the same thing.
It's not the
No,
same, they're
it's
totally
not.
different things, totally different things. Weight distribution is done by the car manufacturer. We'll buy a Mercedes or a BMW, 32 for weight distribution. It's the center of mass, because the battery's at the bottom. It's much lower to the ground. That's what you get in the car.
Okay.
Yes, but you also get a skateboard platform where there's motors on the ends and the batteries in the middle. So it's a symmetrical platform.
But it doesn't guarantee it. It doesn't guarantee it.
Yeah, well, in my all-wheel drive Ioniq 5, it's 50-50 weight distribution. It even says it in the
It's
manual.
very close to the center of mass.
Okay, I was talking about my experience with the cars. Like I had rear wheel drive cars, trucks and stuff, no weight in the back. You're just losing the rear end. This nice big car that I have right now, like the batteries
The floor.
taking the floor. So the weight's evenly distributed there.
Between
And then I do have a motor at the back, correct? But at the same time,
It's like
I'm,
80 pounds.
you know, it's, I find,
That is not an advantage. You can get an ice vehicle with weight distribution.
Thing
It's
is,
the center of mass that's much lower than EV. That's the benefit.
talk
okay,
about center of mass. Center of mass is a three-dimensional position. So you can have the same mass in, or same weight in front and in back.
But if the center of mass is up in
And
the middle,
mass
yeah,
is, instead of being up here, down here.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
So,
Now, can I just put one thing in though, that is more true for the clean sheets than the converse. So
Yes.
The Kia Soul, is also is available in gas and or ice.
Yeah,
I still think is better.
well, they still have the battery that's,
they're less optimal, right? Because they have to design them with a gas engine in mind, right? So Sam is talking about the clean sheet EV prototypical where it's a skateboard platform. Battery pack is the floor between the wheels, and then there's motors on each end, basically, and you just drop the body on top, right?
Right, but like I say, the non-clean sheet EVs I still think are better than their gas counterparts in winter, but they aren't as much better than their gas counterparts in winter. Would be my
Depends on because my Leaf, I've noticed, so the Leaf is based on the Versa, basically.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I have no traction in the winter because it assumed, I guess when they designed the platform, it was for a gas engine. The gas engines weigh a lot, and it's supposed to be in the front, and it's a front-wheel drive car. But when you EVify it, the battery pack is through the floor. It's kind of like an L-shaped thing. And so there's like no weight on the front wheels because it's just the electronic stuff. And so like I put performance tires on the car in the summer because I just can't, like when it rains, I have no traction on the front because it's poorly designed. But it's a Leaf, so it's the exception to the rule, right?
like it, okay.
Sorry to like shoot down your entire presentation, Sam.
About my experiences with EVs.
That's fine.
And I did try all the cars, so obviously I can't speak for everyone. So it's nice to hear comments about your experience with cars in winter time.
yes.
Okay.
Next, click.
Ah,
Oh yeah, the full tank of gas every morning. So it's nice not to have to go to a gas station, freeze your knuckles for 10, 15 minutes, wait in line, pay a fair amount of price. Instead, you just click it in, run inside. You can wait whatever time you have, either overnight or whatever. So it's nice during the winter time not to stand outside for that 15 minutes a pop.
that, you said your favorite was the whatever. This is my favorite reason for
EVs?
EVs.
This is nice.
Oh, did I go backwards? No.
Nope, that's all right. Disadvantages of EVs in the winter. So that's one of them. Click again. Range reduction. So we do lose a bit of range during the winter time because of the cold weather. Unfortunately, the ice buildup, like on a ice car, the engine will warm up your headlights and all that. On my EV, when I did road trips, I had to stop and scrape my headlights.
That's true.
And my sensors and cameras, the ice does tend to build up on them.
There's nothing making heat in the front. Yeah.
Exactly.
That is true.
And even in the back, there's no heat. Charging time increased, unless you have preconditioning on your car. Not all EVs have them. So it does take a little longer to charge, especially on road trips. You're paying for it, so it's not as pleasant. Next.
I'm working on it.
Okay, yeah, frozen, yeah, that happened to me once. So
Gotta go
far.
whack.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's your new car. You don't want to whack it too hard.
It's a car.
Yeah.
Give it a whack. It's fine.
So frozen charge doors or door handles. I did discover that my car, they put heat through the handles. When you start your heat pump and all that, they have a little vent that goes through the handles to thaw them out. So this way they pop out in and out without a problem.
Do you know what I discovered today, though?
No.
So you know the charging door on our car?
Yeah.
Yeah, it froze shut.
Yeah,
And then how do you open it?
that's with the whack.
I did, and it worked, but still,
Yeah.
a little disconcerting.
Yeah, especially that if you whack it, you're pressing that button.
I
And
know.
then it's gonna
And yeah.
abuse it. So that is one very like disadvantage of EVs, but you know, it's in there.
And then, okay.
Just want to mention, I closed my Tesla Model S flap when it was frozen, and I broke it. In so much that it wouldn't, when you press it, it pops open. It wouldn't do that, and it cost like it was not too bad. It was like $100, but it was a trip to Ottawa to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah,
The other
there's
thing-
definitely something to be said about the simpler designs that are just like the Kona and the Nero, where it's just like a mechanical plastic flap that you just sort of like, it's like a cupboard door with a little spring where you just push it and it pops out. Whereas like the fancier ones like Tesla and the Ionics and stuff with their motorized thing, it's like, oh, can you just
I
make
know,
it
but come on. I know there's a child in the audience, but pressing a button and saying "open butthole,"
it is kind of nice.
it's worth the extra few thousand. One quick comment. My wife has the Bolt with a B,
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
D at the end, a T at the end. And you know, they don't have preconditioning like the Tesla. So we're trying to experiment with you know, rapid acceleration and deceleration regen. It doesn't take too long to warm up the battery. Like rapid acceleration, which is not a great idea in the snow and heavy traffic, but you know, if you're on a long trip and there's nobody around, it wouldn't take very long, you know, flooring it and then letting it regen for it to come up to temperature, and then your charging would be really a lot quicker than if you just pulled up to the charger cold.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We've actually tried this, like, what specifically, like, how long did it take? What kind of temperatures are we talking?
We're just in the process of doing it. You know, it's a learning curve.
Okay, because I've seen people on like YouTube talk about doing that. They say it doesn't really work all that well. And I mean, you can do the math because like the Ionic battery reconditioning draws 5 kilowatts. But trying to create 5 kilowatts of waste heat in your battery from hammering it is really hard because the battery is like 99% efficient. So if you're drawing like
No, I don't know about that. I mean, when you watch the Tesla, you switch the gauge from power consumption and generation. 7 kilowatts is pretty low. Like, I mean, that's standard charging. So
Actually, somebody did a YouTube video like very recently about two ID4s, one driving regularly to a charger and one punching it and regenning it, and it made a significant difference with charge speed.
it's like
out of spec motoring.
if you're track, you know, you take your car in a track. If I took my car in a track, it would blow the doors off of everything for about 3/4 of a lap, and then it would shut down. It's a lot of heat. Like it's
really hard to
hundreds of amps.
Yeah, no, it's something to think about, right? Like, yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so we did have in the comments, somebody bought EVCO Solaris charge port cover for the winter.
Ryan did, our new board member.
Yeah, our new board member, Ryan. So there are some options out there, and people put mitts on top of the charger when you're charging itself, so it's not gonna freeze the handle. There's ways around it, and if you go on Amazon, they will sell you anything.
Although if you're cheap like me, you can get, if you have the right EV, and you'll know when you see it. If you go to Home Depot, they have styrofoam. They're covers for outdoor drains, like outdoor faucets for your hose. But you can buy these things, and you can like MacGyver a way to cover your charge port with it if your charge port is the right shape and size. And when you go to Home Depot and look at these things, you'll see, like, you'll know, like, oh yeah, my charge port's huge, so I can't do that. Or yes, it works. So worth a thing. And then you just like, the way it works is you just like put your charge cord through the little doodad that's supposed to hook on to the faucet, and then it just sort of lives on there, and then you just slide it on, and it's good. And they're like $12. So
batteries and cabin preconditioning. So basically, battery preconditioning Not every car has them. Even my Ioniq 5 doesn't have it
Yet.
yet. It is certain manufacturers.
I thought it's available for the Ioniq 5 now. For the
It
Ioniq
is
5.
available, and it does come on a 2023 models.
But we need an update.
But the update is available in the US. Wonder why, but not in Canada yet. It's supposed to come in the next few months. So basically when spring comes.
Yeah, well, but it's useful.
Yeah. So, but certain manufacturers are coming out with the aftermarket updates that you go to dealership, get to plug your car in, and then you will be able to have something like that. Other cars, it's not even an option. The Leaf, from what Mike is saying, they might with that battery pack from New Zealand.
Yes, yeah,
Hey,
maybe.
never know.
Get your hands on that.
So, yeah, not all EVs have them, but it is pretty useful for the ones that do have it. Cabin preconditioning is basically warming up your car while it's plugged in, so it doesn't drain your batteries while you're driving. It's one way to extend your range. You basically plug it in, have the heater going, and then when you take your car, it's nice and warm, so you don't need to crank the heat or have heated seats going and draining your battery.
Yeah, and actually to that point, so to address your question earlier about the range in the cold, that's one of the ways to increase it, right? Because if you're plugged into the mains charging, then you can sort of optimize how warm your battery gets, because if you time your charging to end just before you need the car, that'll put the most heat from the charging process in the pack. And then if you do the preconditioning thing, most EVs that have like heat pumps and liquid cooled batteries will use the preconditioning process to run warm fluid through the pack to warm it up as well. So it's like when I said that your question is a bit nuanced, but like that's what I was talking about, right? There are ways to mitigate the range effects of the cold on your pack based on like what you do and how you treat the car, basically.
I'm curious, in your app for your car, can you set the charge end time?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of cars have that. Not all of them do, but a lot of them do. So you can say, I want to charge off peak only, or I want to charge and I want it to finish charging before 8 a.m. Or like you can have, or I want it to start at 1 a.m. So like my Leaf, I can tell it when to start, but I can't tell it when to stop. And so for my Leaf, to optimize the charging and stuff to make the most heat, I wanted it to be ready at 8 a.m. And so I had to like experiment for a week to figure out, okay, what time do I need to start the charge in the morning for it to be ready at 8 a.m. Turns out it was like 1:12 in the morning or something was when the charger had to kick on to have it ready for the next day. But like our Ioniqs, you can set the end time, so the car will figure all that out based on what the state of charge is and everything.
So there's also smart chargers that allow you to do a lot
Yeah,
of that stuff.
that's two. Yeah.
And
No
some
charge
of the app
point
programs where like it looks at how much emissions the grid's putting out, making sure you're able to use your emission stuff too.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds.
There's all kinds of ways, yeah.
So guys, a couple of things here. So I would encourage you guys to set up your cars, if they support it, to charge so they're ready by a certain time. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Raymond.
Okay. And the other thing that I would encourage you to do is to not precondition after 7 a.m. Okay, because there's a morning peak at that time, and it'll cost you more for the electricity, anyways. But from a grid perspective and a environmental perspective, that gets us into a peak period where they're using gas to produce electricity.
Yeah. Hey, good point.
So let's try to finish this presentation, if you guys don't mind.
Mitchell's got one too.
Yeah. So things to do, winter tires. It doesn't matter if it's an EV and ICE or whatever. Winter tires are probably the best thing you can do in the winter time. Easy to find. They have the little snowflake with the mountain on them on the sidewall. A good pair will take you a long way. Extra jug of washer fluid, because that's the only fluid you need to carry in an EV. So might as well have it. Make sure you remove snow and ice, because the ice does build up easily. So the least amount of snow or ice on your car will prevent that. Using the snow mode or winter mode, certain cars have them, is very useful because like for us, there's battery regen. So it will avoid spinouts.
But not only that, so like snow mode in the Ioniq at least distributes the power 50-50 versus if you just use all-wheel drive normally, it biases towards the rear.
Yeah.
So in snow mode, it forces 50-50 power, which is really useful, actually. I use it all the time now. It's great.
Go to apa.ca, they do a review of winter and summer tires for Canada. These are brands you can buy in Canada.
Yeah.
Both all American states.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks.
So go on there, scroll towards says Hacapolita, but.
Yeah, Nokia and Hacapolita, just buy that. Because they're amazing.
Honestly, like,
Sold. Anyway, yeah,
So we use
they're so good.
Yeah. A comment here, you're talking about make sure they remove snow and ice from their cars. That's a must if you have any kind of car.
Yeah,
Because
that's
that's
true.
snow and ice is dangerous.
Yep. And not just the one on the car, but in the wheel wells as well. That ice is up and it can cause damage. You hit a bump or whatever, it can actually cause damage to steering or body.
Cause damage to somebody else's car.
That's true.
100%. Yeah, actually, yeah, I've seen some scary close call. No outer roof traction control is also very useful. My first experience in the snow, I just got the car. I'm going to the garage to get my winter tires put on. And I blocked the entire intersection, a very busy one too, because the plow went through, left the snowbank, and I was stuck in it and panicking, not knowing where the buttons are because the car is brand new. I couldn't take traction control off and it wouldn't allow me to move. So know your car before using it in the winter, find that traction control button, the snow mode, and little things like that can be very useful.
can I do one point about traction control?
Yes.
On EVs, it is excellent.
It is.
It has so much.
If you're not stuck in
if you're not,
something.
if you're not stuck, but like on the road to not getting stuck, traction control is very good on EVs.
If
It's another awesome.
your vehicle isn't moving, you hit the wrong tire. It's a traction problem. That's why it's called traction control.
Correct.
It's not that the traction control's broken, it's your tires don't have traction.
Yeah.
Right. I don't disagree with that. Driving it was great with the right tires. It was also great. I was on the way to get the tires. So you're 100%. But knowing those buttons exist can save you a lot of headaches.
I think what Sam was saying is sometimes traction control will cut off your torque if you're getting wheel spin, but he actually needed wheel spin to move.
To get out. To dig
So
out.
cutting off the torque and having traction control gave him less traction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that happened to my mother in her Tesla Model Y. Where the mailboxes are, it's sort of off, one of these community mailboxes off to the side. There had been a big snowstorm. They hadn't fully plowed out the mailbox, and so she was really in deep. She didn't know how to turn off the traction control and sort of be able to rock start, and so she actually did get the Tesla Model Y stuck.
But I mean, that's true with any car, like even race cars, like if you get stuck, sometimes you have to turn off traction control just to get the wheels to move.
If you have a Tesla, everyone, it's called slip start.
Yes, it's called slip start.
Traction control, just so you'll find it easier.
Yeah.
Different, yeah.
Anyway.
I'm going generic.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Okay, moving on. Chris.
So Sam, there's a question in the chat there from Arson. It's even though well balanced with low center of gravity, EVs are still heavier. How is the emergency stopping difference affected? Do you want to answer that?
It's a little bit up in the chat.
The trade-off is similar because you get more traction because of the weight. So,
Yeah,
a
but
trade-
you don't. But so the traction is about getting you moving. If you've locked your wheels in the winter, doesn't matter what you have. It's you're a projectile at that point, right? So you still need to be careful when you're going when you're driving in rough conditions, not to go too fast and get yourself in trouble.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay,
Right.
next.
regen.
Regen. Yeah, regen can be tricky on snow and ice. Sometimes it can be your worst enemy. You can start, it's like you can lose control and start sliding. So low regen or none might be useful. Keep your battery charged, but not too high. So between 20 and 80%. You don't want to have it too high or too low, so that it does have room to fluctuate with the temperatures and all that. And to have the 80% is nice, so you know that it can warm up your battery for a longer period of time, especially if you leave.
But also, it's important to keep it above 20 for most cars because the car needs to charge a 12-volt battery as well. And most cars, if they're below 20% on the traction battery, they won't charge a 12-volt.
Correct.
So you might end up coming to a car that won't unlock because it's like the 12-volt died,
Or won't start.
or it
and then-
won't start because the 12-volt died.
Yeah.
So keep it above at least 20. I, in the winter, like do 30 is my minimum.
Just advice for your cell phone.
Yeah.
I had a story of at a supercharger, a guy, a Google executive, couldn't charge his Tesla type thing, even though he's plugged in at a supercharger. So I went on YouTube, found the video on how to sort of, use one of the standard, battery jumping systems to start the battery, the 12-volt battery, so he could actually start the charging the
Okay.
supercharger.
Phil has a question. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, Sam, I think you're going to need to clarify your comment about not charging more than 80% in the winter.
Don't charge and park your car more than 80%. If you're going on a road trip, you can charge it up, use the battery, that's no problem. But if you're charging your battery too high and then the weather gets warmer and your battery is sitting there for a long period of time, it's not necessarily a good thing. It's
stress up, like, so basically it's the same old thing, like, don't keep your car at a high state of charge for long periods of time. It's just not good for the chemistry of the battery, right?
Are we,
It's not just-
sorry,
Not-
are we
not just-
talking LFP or are we talking lithium ion?
Lithium ion, normal car.
Not all cars use lithium ion anymore.
Yeah, they do.
Correct. And going forward, we'll see more and more LFP, so it'll be less of an issue.
Yeah.
But for most of us, it's an issue at this point. Right?
Lithium ion, it's an issue. LFP in the future, yeah, will make it less of an issue, but for now, most cars are lithium ion. So it's good to keep them, the closer to 50% you can keep it for the longest period of time, the better. I mean, obviously you have to use your car, so yeah, charge it to 80, but don't leave it there forever, and don't leave it, at 20 forever, sort of try and keep it in the middle. Rule of thumb.
Okay. Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
So this 100%, don't keep it at 100%. To my understanding, that's important
Yeah.
in hot weather. High state of charge, high temperatures affects battery degradation. In the winter, you don't have a high temperature. So again, this is a presentation about driving your EV in winter. So why would you not want to keep your state of charge over 80% in the winter?
So I think the concern is that if you charge fully at a very low temperature and you get to the maximum voltage of the cells, and then the temperature increases, the voltage of the cells will go up, so you could potentially overvolt them. I don't think it's too much of a concern though, because your BMS has temperature sensors in it. Your battery management system will charge it knows what temperature your battery's at and charges them accordingly. So it's not going to charge them to, standard for a single lithium cell is 4.2 volts, but it's not going to go over whatever voltage per cell. It's the temperature. It has a chart inside programmed into it to tell it what temperature the cell should be at for a given voltage and everything. So you're unlikely to damage your battery by doing that. But good advice, like to keep it around 80% most of the time, unless you're going on a road trip, because that's just unless you have a lithium iron phosphate battery. Those don't seem to care if you put them at 100 all the time.
They do not.
The 80% rule is for summer or winter. It's not a winter thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but guys, I think also things are there's a no and not an and, right? So it's not a question of having it at 100% when it's warm. It's either having it at 100% for a long time, or in the case of the Leaf, especially having the battery get really warm because the Leaf doesn't have heat management, right?
Anyway, we'll keep
So-
moving.
EVs are good in winter. I'm done. Thanks. That was the EV float for the Christmas parade. If you guys didn't see it, it was fun. Next year, November, if you guys want to join.
Okay, Mitchell, you're up.
Thank you.
My
Good job.
presentation has
My last presentation, boys.
my presentation is not going to be nearly as insightful or as exciting as that last one. So I can just talk about boring legislation, I guess. That date's wrong. Ignore the date. I was doing this at a different time. But hopefully, in terms of what I'm going to talk about, you've at least heard of it. And it's the federal government's sales mandate that they've recently released, which is a requirement for automakers to ensure there's an increasingly large number of sales of EVs in Canada, with those regulations starting in 2026 and then eventually getting to 100% in 2035 as a broad strokes of how this might roll out. Next slide there. This one lays out sort of the sales targets over the years. And so it starts off small, going from 20% to 23%, and then it grows to 60% by 2030. And that's roughly 10% per year from 2028 onwards. There's years where 2030, the jump from 2029 to 2030 is pretty significant, and then the jump from 2030 to 31 is pretty significant. And then near the end, it kind of trails off because at that point, most people, or most manufacturers anyways, will have already made the large investments they need to do in order to get EVs into their fleet. So a lot of that growth in sales happens sort of in that 2030 to 2032 period, or 2033 even. Next slide. So the more interesting part of this is how it actually works, which is actually aligns with how a lot of climate change and GHG emission reduction regulations typically work, is where companies that say are able to make investments sooner can go ahead and just achieve these sale requirements. And as part of those sale requirements, they earn credits. And then companies that haven't made large investments or can't make large investments at the time where those sales mandates come into place will incur a compliance deficit. So those that are able to achieve this sales mandate earn credits that they can then sell to companies that don't, creating a market that's used to sort of figure out what it costs and what the net benefits might be for a car company to invest in this themselves, or to buy credits from others who are doing it, and which one of those two options is cheaper to them. But ultimately, if an automaker is to be sort of in existence past 2035, or in my estimation, past 2030, you kind of have to start making your investments now, because it typically takes about 10 years for you to kind of get to a scale where you're basically you can follow along with the regulations and the growing sales mandates. I don't know if I've got a slide in here that talks about how this typically works, but say a company like Tesla, who basically only sells EVs, is going to have a massive advantage in this new market, and they can almost set the price whatever they'd like, as every single automaker tries to catch up to them, or at least to the level they need to be at in 2026. I think I see a hand from Phil. Do you have a question there?
Yes, I do. Sorry, Mitchell, big picture here. I'm a little confused. I'm making an assumption here. First of all, it's because your slide says Ottawa Climate Change Master Plan, but what you're referring to has nothing to do with the city of Ottawa. This is federal, I assume?
Yeah, sorry. I did this presentation on a template that I shared from work because I was doing this sort of on my work computer, even though it wasn't during work time. This is a federal thing, not a city of Ottawa thing.
Okay, and the next question, if I understand, if we go back to your chart with the targets.
Previous slide there, yeah.
If you don't mind.
Yep.
Just so at least I understand, and maybe other people understand. So what we're saying is that the federal government is saying a company, an auto manufacturer, we'll use 2028, 34% of their cars should be electric vehicle cars. And if they sell more or less of those cars, then the stuff you put on the other slide applies. There's a credit or a deficit. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Correct?
So say a car company sells 100,000 cars and they only sell 30,000 of them that are electric. The extra 4,000 there, they have a deficit that they have to cover somehow, which is either buying credits that are from other automakers, or they'll be charged their own set of credit. They'll be charged a separate fee by the federal government at some point. I think they have a certain amount of years they're given before they actually have to pay that. So there's a little bit of flexibility in it in terms of when they have to pay, but generally the way it works is if they have a deficit, they'll have to pay it back in some way.
There's a problem with this model. It's like the inspirational self-driving model. The federal government set standards, and nobody's talking about the big problem we have. The big problem is called last mile. Right now, we have less than 5% adoption of EV vehicles. As we get to these greater percentages, the electrical grid won't be able to sustain it.
Yes, it will.
So we're actually gonna have 10% market share this year.
Distribution is not a problem. The generation stations, we can make that happen. The problem is the last mile. My house has a 200 amp panel. If I want to go all electric like the federal government wants me to, I'd have to get at least 100 amp for.
No, I have 200 amp, and I'm all electric.
Put the car.
200
So who is that? Who is that talking?
It's like gas barbecue, replace my gas.
Yeah.
So to get that panel, who's gonna pay for the panel? It's me. Who's gonna pay for the new cable going into the pole? That's me. Who's gonna pay for part of that new transformer? Nobody's discussing it. The whole last mile infrastructure, nobody's discussing it. And in order to get here, we have to get better electrical distribution.
Okay, so who's talking? Who's talking?
He's in the room.
Walter.
Walter.
Okay, but so Walter, so you're saying nobody's talking about this, but that's absolutely false. We've had many discussions at EVCO about this, and the industry is talking about it all the time. And you do not need to do upgrades to your panel typically to be able to charge your car.
Yeah, I have a 200 amp panel at my house. I have an air source heat pump as my heat. My house is all electric, and I have 2 EVs, and it's all on 200 amp.
I have a 200 amp panel, and most of my panels is used. I have no.
What do you have at your? He's an electrician. He can actually.
I actually do this for a living.
Yeah.
That I can talk with you about for hours. And on a 200 amp panel, it is possible to have a decent sized house run full electric with no gas, with electric cars, with the heat pumps, and like there are options out there to do it. It all depends on what you need to change and evaluate your needs. It's everybody's got their own needs. If you have a mansion and you got 20,000 square feet, obviously you'll need more power. You're right. But if it's a common house, I've seen it done many times.
Some type of panel change. You could get a sub panel.
No. So Sam could speak to that.
Can I just finish? Like, even if they don't change their panel, the transformer in the backyard or wherever it is has to change because the load requirements are going up. They're going up to a load where most people will be charging at night, which is a low time for hydro, and they expect low loads. Now you're putting a high load there.
And hydro will change that transformer because when the needs are increased, their revenue is also increased because they're still charging for that hydro. And they will provide that transformer to make sure that they get that income.
We've actually had Hydro Ottawa in a few meetings, like last year we had them in. And they spoke exactly about that because we've heard these concerns. You're not the only one to bring them up.
But if they want to get to these 2030, 2040 goals, they have to start changing transformers now.
Which is what's happening.
They do.
Transformers on a pole in the
Yep.
backyard.
That's exactly what's happening.
How are they going to do upgrade all the wiring?
The same way they did it in the 70s when everyone got air conditioners.
Let's say you live in Canada. The hydro's underground. How are they going to upgrade that?
They will. So hydro.
So okay, guys, let's cut this conversation here. We're wasting time on some stuff we've discovered before.
We'll do that.
And yeah, Walter.
At the talk time.
Yeah, Walter will be happy to talk to you later about this. But right now let's move on because you're repeating the disinformation that we're getting from other people. So can we move on?
So do you want this slide or the one after it?
I think we can go to the next slide if you want.
So actually, Mitchell, I have a question for you.
Sure.
On the numbers slide. So my understanding is
Two slides back there.
Yeah, so my understanding is there's a provision for some PHEVs in there, but they count for a fractional amount, and that fraction will decrease over time. I believe, right? Something like that?
I really wanted to dive into the EV specific number, but if manufacturers aren't able to make full battery electrics, PHEVs do qualify, I believe, up till 2030. and then they can use the credits they get from making PHEVs all the way until 2035. But like at that point, they have to only sell EV, like full battery electrics. It's a very complicated way of doing it, but it gives manufacturers a little bit of flexibility, which I think I speak to in the slide here. But ultimately, you're going to have to sell full battery electric vehicles or something else that's zero emission, which the cheapest option at this point is a battery electric. So as part of this consultation that they did, of course, they had to go and ask manufacturers what they think manufacturers can do. And of course, the manufacturers said we can't because we're manufacturers and that's not our job. Generally summing it up. But some of the key points that I'd like to highlight is they preferred more of an alignment with how the U.S. does it with their U.S. fleet average GHG emission standard, which should work in theory. But there's nothing to say an EV mandate isn't just as effective, if not more predictive for industry to comply with. So that was the response basically from the federal government. All other manufacturers in the entire world are investing in the zero emission vehicles, and therefore zero emission vehicles would be the primary technology to comply with all those GHG standards. So again, a ZEV mandate should be more prescriptive, and it should allow manufacturers to align with it in a more effective way. They were strongly against the development of a national sales mandate and not in position to comply, because that's what they always say. And then they advocated for more consumer rebates, accelerating deployment of charging infrastructure, worker upskilling, and consumer education programs, which this federal government, as well as the U.S. federal government, is also doing already. And they wanted to match the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act for new advanced manufacturing production tax credits, which is probably okay to suggest, but we don't have nearly the same amount of vehicle manufacturing capacity here in Canada as we do in the U.S. Maybe that's a way we could attract more production of EVs to Canada, but that's maybe something that'll be a point of discussion in Parliament whenever that happens again. And then beyond manufacturers, they also consulted with the NGOs, so you get both sides of the argument, those that don't want to make actions and those that want to make more ambitious actions, and then ultimately these regulations should arrive somewhere in the middle. The NGO comments align with the fact that sales mandates are used all around the world to accelerate the adoption of technologies. And this sales target that would be achieved here in Canada would make it so that we're less dependent on changes in US regulations, because they're more likely to go back and forth until the end of time. And they were divided on the inclusion of PHEVs, which is to Raymond's point, where if they are included, they should be treated as a transitionary technology, which I think is how the federal government here in Canada decided to align it with. So therefore, they can include them for a certain amount of time, but they're not here forever, and they shouldn't be a replacement for a battery electric vehicle, which should be the mandate going forward from 2035. And then we could go to the next slide there, Mike. They also consulted with some provinces and territories. So the PHEVs would serve sort of the more remote and northern communities, which will be more likely to adopt fast charging infrastructure more quickly, just because there's not as much driving traffic through those areas that helps sustain a business case for them. And the other thing, I guess it's not touched on this slide, but maybe the next one, that I can go into more detail, but this isn't a regional requirement. So manufacturers are allowed to sell more in a particular province than in another, depending on how that market adopts zero emission technology. And therefore, it probably will still result in BC and Quebec getting more of these vehicles than, say, other provinces of a similar size. Just based on the fact that they're further along, they have more EV charging infrastructure, and they already have a certain level of consumer adoption that exceeds, say, Manitoba or Saskatchewan even. So built into this as well, they've assumed some additional sort of measures to make it a little bit easier to model. Like we were talking with Sam's presentation, all these vehicles will have an additional cold weather sort of range loss, and as well, they're assuming that a lot of these, well, I guess all of these actually, will have all-wheel drive, which makes them more expensive to manufacture and produce, which is how they've provided the incremental price differences for vehicles over time, and how eventually they'll become cheaper compared to a gasoline vehicle. So below in that, you'll see sort of how the cost of having a battery car compares to an ICE vehicle, how a battery truck compares to an ICE truck, how a plug-in car compares to a regular car, and a plug-in truck compares to a regular truck. Ultimately, by 2035, most of these are still going to be more expensive than an ICE vehicle, but your savings that you're going to get over their operational lifetime are going to be more than enough to offset their higher initial price. Next slide there, Mike. This is kind of a breakdown of what those costs and benefits look like. The first part there is the cost. The second part's the benefits. The ultimate costs of this whole thing. I think I'll total it up in the next slide, but they'll talk about home charging stations, the higher incremental costs of those vehicles at the start, and the higher electricity sort of costs that people will have by spending more on electricity. But then you'll save on all the reduced fossil fuel purchases, the emission reductions and the benefits that has for human health, and then that 25% reduction in selected air pollutants, which is summarized in the last slide with a couple of other additional benefits and challenges. They've quantified it as 2 cents per kilometer driven as a maintenance savings. You'll spend less time refueling, where 80% of your charging is at home. There will be more DCFC installations, which will incentivize business models for EV adoption. More kilometers traveled due to lower operating costs. So more vehicles will drive more distance because it's cheaper to move them. Increased congestion, accidents, and noise will be a problem. Overall increase in electrical demand. This one was an interesting one, which is back to, I guess, part of what we were talking about earlier, where the overall demand for electricity increases by between 2.5% and 5%. And there might be challenges for situations where there are public parking lots because of the fact that you're now charging a bunch of vehicles in one spot. But not something that the government found was going to be significantly impossible to achieve their sales mandates. This is the government's words. Don't take it as what I'm saying. They've also got a cost of retraining mechanics, so all these EVs will need to be serviced in some way. Gas stations will lose traffic. That's too bad, I guess. And there will be more demand for batteries across the supply chain, not just in vehicles, but across, say, all the way from medium duty to heavy duty and everything in between. And then this is just a summary of everything. The government likes to do things in a discounted manner so that savings that are achieved early on have excess benefits in later years because you've achieved them sooner rather than later. Ultimately, if you're just looking at it for a dollars and cents number, your net benefits come sort of around 2036, I think is how that's written out. And then by 2050, your net benefits are pretty significant. I think this is measured actually in billions. And then if you were discounting things, you get a really big number, which, again, that's how economics people do math, and that's how they came up with that massive number. If you're just looking at it at dollars and cents, you'd simply just be looking at that, I think it's the fourth column there, with your total net benefits coming out as a positive.
A quick question.
Sure.
Do you know if any of that number salad there that has taken into consideration that the reduced fossil fuel consumption will mean less demand of electricity? Because refining is around 4 or 5% of all the generation in North America, and the total fossil fuel use of generation is around 11%. All the generation in North America. Is any of that in that calculation? Do you know?
My understanding is because the way fossil fuel extraction works is they generate electricity on site, and it's not electricity generation from the provincial grid. It wouldn't necessarily have a significant impact on the overall net benefits because it's all costs that are borne by individual businesses and not by the province. could be wrong, but it wasn't mentioned specifically in this study around whether the reduced production of fossil fuels in
At the site, they
Alberta.
use natural gas, but, you know.
Yeah, but they would be using natural gas that they extract from the process of getting oil out of the
No,
ground.
but
So
like Sarnia, I just drove by there a month or so ago. They just are now tearing down the coal plant that they built for 5 refineries there, and they're still huge, like the largest power wires you've ever seen in your life going into the 5 refineries that are in Sarnia. And that's just Sarnia, and that's just Ontario, which produces no oil but does refining. So yeah, Alberta uses a bunch of coal, and they used natural gas at the time, but not for refining, I don't think. Well, maybe they do.
no, I wasn't working on a refining basis. I was doing the extraction process. So
Yeah.
like you have to get oil out of the ground, and the way you get oil out of the ground is with a high amount, well, in this case, steam, and that steam is produced by a massive amount of electricity. That electricity is produced by getting natural gas out of your
Initially, but pump jacks uses in North America use as much electricity as 15 million Teslas. So they in the drilling and, you know, fracking and stuff like that, they do, but that actually pulling oil out of the ground long term is uses a lot of electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen a quantification in this study, so maybe it's just another thing that would be another net benefit, obviously. So, I don't have an actual number, so I was just gonna keep going with the rest of this presentation. I did some sensitivity analysis, like any good government would do, and said if there were 50% higher or 50% lower fuel costs, would we still get benefits? And it's sort of a good story, where obviously if you decrease fuel costs, it's not going to be as beneficial as if there was an increase in fuel costs. But the likelihood of a decrease in fuel costs isn't as great as an increase, as we've recently seen. So you'll still have a net benefit, and if it increases even further, you'll have an even greater net benefit. And the other thing that they concluded, at least from their sensitivity analysis, was that if there's a need for vehicles to tow, which debatable in most cases, a PHEV with a towing package would be a more useful use of resources than building out a significantly higher cost battery electric pickup truck. If you were to provide a pickup truck with a similar or a comparable range that you need to tow something, however far people typically tow something, it would be $17,000 more for a battery electric truck compared to a plug-in hybrid truck in 2026. So as a manufacturer looking at that, you would be wondering, do I make this massive investment in a battery electric truck that I don't know would sell to people who need to tow, or do I invest in something that is more of a transitionary thing, at least in this early year, and then try to sell something that's a full battery electric in 2035 when the technology's matured and there's more acceptance of battery electric trucks going forward. So that was sort of what they considered as, from 2026 at least, is having a plug-in hybrid option for some of these vehicles.
Can I ask a quick question about the fuel cost? The slide previous was 50% higher or lower fuel cost. Is that electricity or gas or both?
That's a gas cost. They only looked at it from a gasoline perspective. Electricity prices don't usually fluctuate that much. Like they won't go up or down 50%.
Their thinking is that fewer people will be buying gas, so the gas will go down?
They do it just based on, like, they do it as an extreme. So like fuel prices have gone up and down 50%. And they use that as a baseline for figuring out the sensitivity of this model to increases and decreases in pricing.
Oh, okay, I see.
It's not necessarily they're saying it's going to go down 50% because of less gasoline consumption. It's just historically gas prices have fluctuated up and down 50%. Yeah, so then greatest impacts obviously is going to impact lower income households because of the higher costs, at least initially up front. Therefore, they're not as likely to benefit from the long-term savings. And then low-income households in general might also live in, say, rental accommodations where they're not suitable for home EV charging, and therefore it would negatively impact EV adoption even further in that sense. The next slide, I think, talks about rural communities, which will have longer periods of cold weather, which is negative to impact on battery range, which we've already discussed. It'll also have those lower levels of public charging and then higher electricity prices because the more remote you are, the more expensive that distribution cost is. And those who live in obviously both of these situations where you're both low income and live in a rural community are most at risk of missing out on those lower costs of ownership and improved air quality. Yeah, that was everything I had. Sorry, it was pretty dry. And if you do have any other questions, I'm sure we can discuss it in the final
Yeah, in the round
table.
Yeah. Raymond, did you want to talk about EVX or should I do that? And Mitchell, can you mute yourself, please?
Can you go ahead,
This is you.
Mike, can you go on ahead on that?
I did already. Oh, you want me to talk? Okay.
Oh, yeah, please. Okay.
You're driving. Okay, so I'm not sure what you wanted me to say, but basically EVX, we're sort of on a hiatus for the winter months a little bit. So our trailer is nicely tucked away, wrapped, and hiding in Blackburn Hamlet. But we are booking events for next year, and those will be, we'll talk about those in the upcoming events shortly in the next couple slides. So yeah, next slide, please, Tommy. So past events first. This is us reaching outside our bubble. So we do kilowatts and coffee, as you know. We had a whole bunch of events in the past couple of months. We try and do it every weekend. We've sort of settled for the winter months downtown here. There's a heated garage that's free to use with EV charging, so we can nerd out about our cars in the warmth and comfort of a heated garage and let our cars thaw out if your car is like mine and lives in the driveway outside. So we've met some new members. They've come tonight. So welcome. Thank you for coming. And that's from Kilowatts and Coffee, and that's advertised on Facebook. So we'll keep doing that. Other past events, we had a board meeting on the 14th. So we were talking about what we're doing this year, figuring out what the plan is for EVCO. We were going to have fewer events. Last year we did a lot of events, like every Tuesday night kind of thing. And that was a little onerous and stressful. So we're going to do bigger events, but fewer of them. And we're going to have a big October show at the E&Y Center. That'll be kind of like our highlight event. There was a January 27th Transit Commission special meeting about e-buses that Raymond and I participated in. Raymond presented, it's up on YouTube. I'll put that on our YouTube channel as well. The staff report was adopted, so we will be purchasing 26 e-buses for the city of Ottawa, like we, not EVCO, like the city of Ottawa. We will be purchasing 26 buses for next year. Total of 350 by 2026, and there should be another 100 in 2027, but that depends on some funding that expires in 2026, and if they can secure more, they'll get more. So there we go.
Yeah. So Michael, I just want to add something on here. So some of you probably remember that the number used to be 450, right? That was 450 by 2027, and the problem is that the funding mechanisms expire in 2026. So we'll probably get another 100 buses in 2027, but they're not part of this initial deal that they've done over the last few weeks.
Yeah. So. Mitchell has your hand up. What's up, Mitchell?
I would just like to thank Raymond for being the only person who seems to have read that report and understands that. But I mean, there's like 3 or 4 news articles that incorrectly claim that we're only getting 350 buses, and we're not. We're only getting 350 buses using this funding, and we're totally expecting to get more going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the plan is ultimately to replace the whole fleet. So yeah.
Ben Lynn asked.
And Lynn.
Sorry, Lynn-ify.
Yep.
Are there any plans for BEV articulated buses?
Yes, not right now, not in these tranches of purchases that they're doing for the next few years, but BEV articulated buses are on the radar, and they are part of the plan. They're going to electrify all of the buses eventually. They're just waiting on the Arctics to be better than the current BEV versions, although even now, from what I understand from the New Flyer advertising stuff, The electric articulated are better than the diesel because they have all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive. So they shouldn't get us stuck as much because they put electric motors in the center as well as the rear versus the diesel, which only has power on the rear wheels. So when you're pushing the bendy bit up the hill, it tends to jackknife. The electric versions don't do that because they have center drive as well. So I think the issue right now is the range. Mitchell might have more information on that front. Go ahead.
Some of the buses they're replacing with electrics, they're replacing the 60-foot extended buses with 40-foot regular buses, at least in the short term, which isn't to say that they won't replace 60-foot buses with 60-foot buses in later years. I think it was just easier for them to retrofit their garages to accommodate the 40-foot electric buses all at the same time. And then once they've got sort of that initial phased retooled, they can then move on to the 60-footers.
Yeah, so for
Yeah,
now,
actually, yeah, sorry. So the other factor there is that given the LRT, it changes considerably how the buses are used, right? So there may be a lot less of a need for 60-footers. I do know that one of the type of buses are looking at eliminating are the double deckers. They're having lots of trouble with them. Lots of maintenance issues with them, but the double deckers were really purchased for one purpose, and that was to reduce the problem of congestion downtown when we had all those buses going through downtown at peak hours, right? So that's less of a problem today. So OC Transpo, should be looking at whether they need those type of buses and making the appropriate decisions, right?
Yep. All right, next slide. So upcoming events. So we have our February meeting here. Doesn't look like that right now because it's winter. But we'll do it on Teams as always. But if you want to join us in person, like the fine people here tonight, there is a bar, so that helps. Refreshments are available at your place. What's that?
Can I do the suggestion to switch to
Meetings? Yeah, we'd like to switch off of Teams, Raymond, because Teams is the worst. So
That's an executive.
we're going to talk about that at the next board meeting, just so you know. Next slide, please. All right, so February 3rd, that's this Friday, for EVCO members in good standing. That means if you've paid your membership, you're an active EVCO member, you can come to visit the OC Transpo Garage at Saint Laurent and have a tour of the e-bus facilities. Since we helped get the e-buses for the city, OC Transpo is going to give us a cool tour and a 90-minute presentation and stuff about them. So it'll be from 1 to 2:30-ish. There was an email sent out to all active members, but if you join us, send me an email at info@evco.ca. And if you'd like to participate, let me know. February 9th, we have a joint meeting with the Houston EVA and the Vancouver EVA. So that'll be online. I think I'm presenting something. I should probably look into that. So that's us. It'll be a virtual event. February 15th, so after Valentine's Day, there's an EVX event from 5:30 to 8. This is news to me. So there's going to be a presentation on charging at work, and I think Raymond's handling all this, networking and answering questions. We need some owners with different models as possible. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Mike. So this is the one happening at the venue downtown there. Remember we talked about this with Envir Center?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I hope it's not news to you, but I'll be presenting from 6 to 7 about charging at work, which that part was news to me. But anyways, the idea there is that it'll be people from various companies that will be there, and we'll be trying to encourage them to do some. We'll be trying to encourage them to do charging at work and also to do corporate events coming up in their work environments. Okay. So
we need owners with as many different models as possible. Not all Teslas, please.
So the idea there is that. Sorry, Mike. So the idea there is if someone wants to talk about a very specific car, then if we have different model owners, we could have them talk to someone who actually owns a car, right?
So like Ryan with your ID4, if you wouldn't mind, just saying, little hint. But yeah, we need different models, so that's good. February 22nd, EVX lunch event, virtual only. Raymond, do you want to talk about that?
So that's a follow-up to the one on the 15th of February. For those who cannot make it, the participants who can't make it on 15th of February, we'll do a recap of what was discussed on the 15th. And so we don't need any help with that event. But we'll do essentially the same thing, but virtual only.
Cool. And Phil, you have a question?
Yes, sorry to be a little picky, but I think there was something a little unclear. So I'm going to state my understanding.
Sure.
On February 15th, there's an event.
Yeah.
Raymond's doing a presentation from 6 to 7. And my assumption is from 7 to 8, networking and answering questions. And so we want members of EVCO who have EVs to go there to help answer questions for people and bring their EVs so people can see their EV. Is that?
Close. We're not the location isn't a good location to show EVs, so we'd like to have the people there, and there'll be snacks and all that, right? So you could arrive as early as 5:30, and talk to people, and so we'll be talking to people. We're not going to be showing the cars, okay? And if you do have a parking charge that you want to get a refund on, let us know. Let Enviro Center know, and we'll cover that. Okay.
But what we're saying is we want a variety of owners of different models, not just like Tesla owners. For example.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can take the LRT to it and stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. And is the Enviro Center going to send out an email about this event?
They are doing a whole bunch of publicity on the event to get people to get to there, but they won't. So I'll coordinate with the Enviro Center folks to send something to the people who sign up to participate. But I don't have anything set up yet for that on the sign up sheet, right?
Yeah, but we should send something out to the EVX list at least.
Yeah. Okay,
we'll
let me figure out something so that people could show their interest, right?
Bye, Tommy.
Okay, very good.
Okay, March 31st, Salon Gatineau. Same promoter as the fall show at Gatineau. If you guys were participating, it was at the same time as the one in Lansdowne, so a lot of you weren't able to make both. They are looking for Teslas. It'll be volunteers for test drives. Will be run by EVCO, like they were last time. So that should be fun. That should be a good weekend. The 16th in Kentville Sustainability Fair. We did that last year in the spring, and that was awesome. So I highly recommend this event. It's super fun. That was our first EVX test run event. It wasn't even official EVX last year, but we'll be there this year in full force, hopefully. October 26th to 29th, there's the EV and Lifestyle Show at the E&Y Center. That's what the one I was talking about to you, I believe it was, on the Cars and Coffee. So that's October 26th to 29th at the E&Y Center. We are working with the Gatineau promoter again. It should be a big event. Mark your calendars. This is going to be we're thinking think fully charged live, only, low-key Ottawa style, if you guys are familiar with that. So it should be really cool. It's going to be more than just EVs. It'll be whole lifestyle stuff, sustainable living, boats and personal mobility and heat pumps and everything. It'll be awesome. Next slide, please. So Kilowatts of Coffee is continuing. 10 a.m. to noon on Saturdays. Like I said, at the World Exchange Plaza, there's a heated garage EV parking on the second floor. We all sort of congregate around there. We go to Le Moulin de Provence now at Metcalfe because it's big and it has pastries and coffee, and that's all you need on a Saturday morning, according to me. So we'll be doing one every week, hopefully this month. There was a last minute change to the last event we had. We had to move it to the Bridgehead at IKEA because of convoy people. So keep an eye on the Facebook group because if I have to change the last minute, that's where I'll post the changes. But for now, this is the plan for this month. Next slide, please. We also have a YouTube channel, so all of our meetings get posted live to the internets on YouTube. We have 48 whole subscribers, so subscribe, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. But yeah, so if you missed a meeting or you want to, come back and watch this one later, you can do that on our YouTube channel. It's at EVC Ottawa. Next slide. I think we're at the round table. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for watching. I know it's a long meeting tonight and a lot of questions from the audience and stuff, but thanks for watching anyway. And we'd like to thank CAA for support. So we will be doing the roundtable now. If you want to participate in the roundtable, then join us live and we can do that. But this is where the video ends for YouTube. So thanks a lot for coming.